Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another IHFRA Lead and Learn webinar. Thanks for making time today. I'm going to continue admitting people as we go. So today we're especially excited to have this topic because if we're being honest, this time of year is usually fairly challenging for a lot of folks. Historically, the summer months tend to be to slow down as more people travel and use that discretionary income. Bear with me. Let me make sure everyone's muted. Go. All right, sorry about that. So again, as people are traveling, using that discretionary income on other initiatives or family. So retailers end up seeing less foot traffic. Manufacturers are watching, their orders soften, and of course, sales reps. Sometimes the last thing the retailer wants to see is someone walking into the store asking, what sort of order can I take from you today? What do you need? But I believe that's why that's exactly when great reps separate themselves from the rest. When business slows down, your value isn't just in the products you represent, it's the ideas you bring. So this is not the opportunity to become a trusted advisor, to walk into your retail partners' stores with insights, best practices, and practical ideas to help them improve their business, even if the visit doesn't result in an immediate order. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today is, during these slow months, how can we help you guys with some things working in retail right now. So joining us today are Taylor Ward and Leah Kirkland from R&A Marketing. Their team works alongside furniture retailers across the country every single day, helping them improve their marketing, merchandising, and their overall retail performance. Today, they're going to share 5 strategies that are working at retail right now. These are not theories. They are real world best practices and case studies taken directly from retailers they're working with every day. Before I turn things over to Taylor and Leah, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded. So if you ever want to revisit or share with a colleague, send to a retailer, what have you, we'll certainly share this recording out afterwards. We'll have it on our YouTube page, on our website, and we'll send you an email with the link. And of course, throughout the presentation, if you have any question at all, don't feel like you have to wait until the end. If you drop it in the chat, I'll try to bring it up and address it as we go. And if we don't get to it, we'll certainly save some time at the end for question and answering. So with that, we're going to dive in. I know Taylor is going to kick things off for us, but before we get into the 5 strategies, I'd like to take a step back and set the stage. Can you give us kind of a quick furniture industry state of the union? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your retail partners right now? What do our members, what do the sales representatives that are on this call need to understand about what's happening before we jump into providing solutions and best practices?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the introduction, Steve. Great to be here again. I think I know a lot of you. If not, great to see you or meet you kind of virtually here. But yeah, right now from a retail state of the union, I think we all are hearing it and seeing it. There's not a lot of sugarcoating out there for this summer in terms of, it's felt slow. It's felt a little sluggish. It feels like we're all working extremely hard to make that dollar. Sometimes it feels like we're spending more than the dollar we earned. I know from the rep side of you with gas prices over the summer, hotel pricing, everything like that, it's been extremely difficult to stay motivated and keep showing up out there. But, the reality check of it is, the industry as a whole has always been one of fear rather than celebration. But when we look across, all of the nation, really, there are some people winning out there. They're not really celebrating those wins because they're afraid of what might happen next month. But there has been some good things out there, and so we wanted to kind of highlight those. Part of today's webinar, of course. But I think the overall trend, if you will, in those that are winning is being a little bit more strategic and being a little bit more outside the box than where they were before. The upside is, we're not hearing the same things of tariffs and all that. That's kind of subsided. Of course, there's new things on the horizon like the strait and everything like that. But, I think overall, from the summer perspective, is there are some wins to be had, and you just got to dive in and find those. And so that's, whether those are the valuable ideas or, part of what you mentioned from a rep's point of view, trying to be a little different strategic partner. I think when we look at product categories, upholstery, reclining, that still remains king, top of category in terms of what's really moving for them. But if the floor is not rotating product enough, you can start to see where, you need to bring some other ideas to help open up slots for you to make those sales. And so rather than pulling more and more product out of your bag, we want to help equip you guys today and some things that you might can present to them that'll help you bring the product out and actually move it. So
I appreciate that. All right, so let's dig in. So, talk to me about the first tip, if you will, the first thing
yeah,
that's working.
perfect. So yeah, as we mentioned, we're going to go through five things, the top five things that we're seeing. We're going to walk through equipping the sales floor for conversion, some tips that you can help bring to your retailers for their sales associates. We're going to look at strategic urgencies, ways that you can drive some concentrated demand through different avenues. We're also, of course, going to cover a big topic that everyone's hearing of the AI world, and how you can tailor that content for those engines. Um, Manufactured tentpole events, I think, is something that a lot of us will get excited about within these top five things because it's very familiar, but in a new kind of light. And then the last thing we'll go over is a new tool that is out there and available to all retailers, and kind of talk through how you can position that for your dealers to explore and look at to help arm themselves. So the first thing, equipping your sales associates. This is something that as reps, you guys are probably, asking your manufacturers in a similar vein to give you these types of tools. And so it's important to make sure that your dealers are doing the same because, if you've ever walked in a store, you always ask the sales associates, how are things going? What are they seeing? Getting a real boots on the ground perspective or point of view. And if they just say, we're doing some financing options, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence. It doesn't instill a lot of, educated sales associates. If they pull a flyer out of the magazine stand up at the front and just kind of show you what's on sale this week, customers are already seeing that. You're probably already familiar with it. So when there's fewer customers coming through the door, you really have got to make every at bat count. So making sure that the sales associates have essentially like little cheat sheets, something simplifying what the offers are out there that are running right now. Retailers are getting pretty crafty about different ways of marketing and creating tiered incentives, tiered buy ups, things like that to try to increase ticket value. And so if the sales associates are a little fuzzy on that or unfamiliar with what's running this week because it changes so often, they really need to kind of have something in their back pocket that they can reference and study. We also see it very helpful that before a promotion drops, having an all hands meeting and going over what those offers are going to be so that when a customer walks in, if they're only getting one or two ups a day, you really want to close both of those if you can. And so having that education and that confidence is really driving some of those higher tickets and higher closes. Um, on the right hand side, we've got a little example of one that customer is running factory direct furniture out of Minnesota. They did a tiered buy up plan where if you spend X, you get Y back. And they printed these out for every sales rep to have. They also printed table cards and put around the showroom. So again, reminding the customers, even if they're just perusing without the rep or associate, what the offers are and what they can take advantage of. And so as you can see here, it's very simplified for the rep to be able to read, be able to present, and know exactly what they can offer to the customer. An extra little tidbit here that we found very helpful is part of this empowering your sales associates is giving them kind of holding back a little bit on the offer to give to them to help close that deal. So, example would be if they're running, 50% off store wide, draw that back to 40% and give that sales associate 10% to offer at the end of the deal. Say, hey, if you go ahead and do this, we can offer an extra X, Y, or Z to that. That gives the sales associate a little more something to put that cherry on top for the customer, and it makes that customer experience feel very special and unique for them right there in the moment.
And practically speaking, a way that you guys can do this, we used AI to create this. I know that you guys are going through different courses and you've got other tools at your disposal, but we put in a prompt that said, "Hey, I'm a retail sales associate. I need a cheat sheet to tell me what the offers look like that we're currently running on the floor. Here are all of the current offers. Can you make me something that's fun, graphical, easy to read?" And you can do this for the brands that you carry if you have manufacturer offers and you can provide them to the sales associates. This is also a great suggestion for your retailers to say, "Hey, I saw your current promotion. I went ahead and put it into Chat GPT. Here's a great little cheat sheet that if you want to print this out for your associates to use in store, we know that this is increasing the close ratio within promotional periods versus those that don't have this available." So, two ways that you can sort of utilize this as a way to add additional value to your retail partners.
Yep. Very good points. And also, she mentioned in there for your manufacturers as well. So if you're getting some bonus deals out there, you're getting, I know summertime right now, there's a lot of closeout offers or overstock inventory runs. So, use this in your own world as well to be able to go out in the field and have little handouts to leave behind that are simplified, short, and small. The next thing, this is a little bit of a campaign strategy, more than an operation, but it's about driving urgency. Naturally, there's always this kind of, I want people in today. And so you're promoting, but you also are thinking in the back of your mind, gosh, Memorial Day is at the end of May, but I'd like to go ahead and get this out early May and run it for 3 weeks prior and then a week after. So you're getting, a 4 week window of advertising, which, traditionally that is a strong tactic. It does work. It does stretch that out. But something we are seeing is this urgency factor rather than a fatigue of ads. And so you create a burst rather than a drip. Um, Great example of this is, we have a customer, Tangers, that they were using kind of a click per day rate via Google and Facebook, spending $30 a day or so over the course of months. Just kind of that notion, always having an ad out there, always having a little promotion clickable. Um, and so rather than spending that $1,000 over the course of 4 weeks or 30 days, we condensed it down to 4 to 5 days as a burst, but used the same budget. Um, and when we compared it against other tactics, we had spent $3,000 on a direct mail, so traditional marketing spend, and generated about 60,000 in sales for that period, versus the 1,000 we spent on a blast generated about 55. So about on par with our direct mail, but looking at a third or 66% less of a budget. And the reasons those are working is naturally all consumers have that urgency drive of, I'm going to miss this if I don't act now. But the high density act of it, when customers are on Facebook, I think we've all if you use Facebook or any social media, I'm sure you've logged out and logged immediately back in, not even thinking like, wait a minute, I just exit this? Why am I back in here? And so rather than not seeing those ads again, it's repopulating and getting your attention over and over. Um, so that is where we're seeing some of that play into high efficiencies. Um, and the other, advantage of this is just like we talked about, kind of moving off some current floor inventory and opening up space for your new products that have come out after April. If things are starting to roll in from those April markets and customers are saying, well, I need to make some room, I need some space, things aren't moving. This is a great way to hype up a weekend sale and move some of that clearance or move some of that older inventory out and bring in some new fresh looks.
Yeah. And sometimes retailers, are trend to sort of stay stagnant when during times when it's slow. We think that action is the answer for this. And so this is a great example of something where they're not changing their budget at all. They're just allocating it to a shorter period of time. And so this is something that doesn't cost them anything additional from what they're doing. It just allows them to try out something new, get creative, really put a lot of time and effort into one particular lead up to a weekend and then see what traffic looks like from there and then, continue to play around with it. But no additional dollars for them, just another way to potentially think about it. And we have seen it really work for customers that have gone for a burst versus just an individual sort of drip campaign.
Before you guys move on, why do you think that kind of concentrated advertising is so effective? Is it just like a kind of a FOMO aspect for or a FOMO situation where they're just afraid that the consumer is going to miss out or create that sense of urgency? Is that what it is, or?
It is in part, but also the bursts. I mean, anything technology driven ad spends are built around algorithms as well. And so you are kind of playing into favoritism with the algorithm on top of that. And so, there's always going to be the consumer behavior of the FOMO, or, even just the, um, you know, remention over and over, drilling it into their head, to take advantage of that. Um, and there is that, when it's consistently concentrated in that time frame, you know, it does feel like it's going to end. If they've seen that same ad already for 3 or 4 days. And so sometimes the second burst will hit harder than the first burst because they realize, yeah, I missed it last time and I've waited a month, 2 months and haven't been able to take advantage. Um, but there is the big part of the algorithms playing into those favored results being that it's concentrated in that time frame and hitting such a high frequency.
Okay. Well, one more quick question on this. I know I'm kind of going off script, but just thinking out loud here. So are all retailers created equally when it comes to this? So if I have some retail partners that maybe they have a social media presence, but not a huge following, are there certain like, I don't want to say minimums, but like, do they need to have a certain audience size, certain follower count for this to really be effective, or is the algorithm targeting um, based on the consumer as opposed to the follower?
Yeah, so since it's a paid ad, your following count and you know page likes, things like that are not playing as heavy of a factor. Definitely there's some strategy behind it. We can, if any dealers are interested in kind of discussing that, we're always open to just a conversation or kind of some objective help in that. But part of our role as an agency is knowing, learning, and planning around what those strategies should be within that paid campaign. But your overall social status or social presence is not as big of a factor when you're in the paid per campaign game. Um, Definitely, the more likes you get, comments you get, it kind of can bolster that naturally. But in terms of should you spend some ad dollars there, that's not playing as.
It, yeah, and this also doesn't, this would be true, this example can be applied to anything that the retailer is running. So in our example, we used social media, right? Because Tanger's was doing a consistent level of advertising with Facebook, and we, decided to bundle it together. The same could be true if you're advertising, if something that's working for one of your retailers is that they're advertising in the paper. Perhaps what you do is save up a couple of those ads and do a larger ad or do something different. So I think the burst is dependent upon whatever sort of trickle of advertising they're doing and just trying to pull it together to provide additional impact so that the consumer sees them in a slightly different way or sees them when they haven't seen them before. So it would apply to anything that a retailer is currently doing. It's just talking about sort of taking the individual, tiny parts that you're doing and pulling it into a more impactful part. And that could be social, it could be cable advertising, it could be print advertising, it could be direct mail. But it's just trying for additional impact so that you're coming across a little bit differently to your base.
Okay, no, thank you. I think that's sort of what I was getting at. I just wanted to make sure that, from a rep's perspective, is there sort of a checklist like, hey, I need to make sure that my retailer is doing these things first before we try to jump right into a burst versus drip. So it sounds like it's really, it's not limited to social. It could be any form of advertising or marketing spend. And then a question came in the chat that I'll jump in here. Is 4 days the magic number? Would a 3-day burst work, or is there sort of a sweet spot in there that you guys are seeing?
We did it on 4 days. I don't know that we've had anybody that's done 3, but I don't know that. I think the days matter less than the sort of impact of it. And it probably depends on the retailer and where they are. But what I would tell them to do is play around with it a little bit. So if they can do 3 days leading up to a weekend, maybe you do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, um, and that works for them, they could also play around with it a little bit. But we don't know that there's a magic number between 3 or 4. We just tested it with 4.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. So in this topic, we're looking at kind of where the buying journey and discovery are happening for retailers right now and what they can do to play into that better. This is going to be a little bit of that AI discussion, if you will. So, what we're seeing is you really need to tailor content within that right space. And so there's a couple of terms that you may be hearing now. These, a lot of you may have just figured out what SEO stands for, search engine optimization. Maybe you learned that just now, but those are, that type of discoverability is kind of shifting with the new age of AI. So within the past, 6, 8 months, a little less, new terms are coming out called AEO and GEO. So if you ever hear your dealer reference that or ask about it, they are talking about answer engine or generative engine, meaning AIs, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whoever versions you may work on or use. But the reality is there's been a pivot in consumer discoverability. What used to, you would pay for those clicks or those blue links to be at the top of a page. And that was kind of middle of the funnel because a customer to find that blue link had a fairly specific search in the search bar. Versus now they're being, just like yourselves, probably, it's very much conversational. And so when you're talking to these systems, large language models, they're trying to respond back to you in a very conversational way. And so now your discoverability is much higher at the top of the funnel instead of kind of in the middle of that funnel. And the reason we say it's more at the top of the funnel is the questions are getting fewer and further from product related and more about information and discoverability on learning. So, one of the examples is, you know, for content to be out there, you need search engines are referencing sites that they want to be helpful. They want to find an expert knowledge base, and they want it to be local if it can. So they being the AI engines. Um, so furniture dealers actually hold a pretty good spot if they can create the content on their sites to be discoverable by these agents, because they are looking for just that. They're looking for a local expert knowledge base. And so who better in a furniture question than a local furniture store? Um, Ways that they can do this, this is where you can kind of play an easy hero for some of them, is help, check their site and see if they've got a good FAQ section. Just like we said, the new search is questions. So if they have an FAQ section with some good laid out answers, they're more likely to be found in that. Another great area that we're seeing is blogs. So if they don't have any blogs on their site, this is a great space for them to get into, by adding in blogs based on content and questions that are, we typically see them around 1,500 to 3,000 words, but that's not a dead set thing. Um, and then the other area is reviews. Naturally, any kind of peer reviews that are being out there from Google, there are ways that your dealers can, promote their top reviews, so that those are first seen, first discovered. And there's workflows set up that they can go through to manage any bad reviews. But ultimately, what these AI agents are looking for are curated content to answer these questions. An example that we're using here, one of our customers is Built Right. They're a single store. So, this is not something that majors are going to outpace a small dealer on. This is something that creates a fairly level playing field across that. But you'll notice here in this ad, we pulled out a couple excerpts to kind of showcase what we mean by local expert knowledge base. The content they're creating should be curated around them as a business. So this one mentions, they're a fourth generation family owned business that's been doing solid wood since 1928. So right out of the gate, the AI engine is noticing this is someone who knows solid wood. Um, and the question was coming up, how do I remove water stains from wood furniture? This question can be framed in many different ways, but it's going to find this article based on these problems that customers are facing. And so while it's not specifically selling a new table, it is addressing a problem for a consumer that potentially will be in the market for a new table because of damages or whatever the reason is. But first, they're going to try to play the hero and help them. And so this article, a little trade secret, if they're struggling on how to create FAQs or blogs, put it into AI. You can actually use AI to help assist you in AI here. A circular world, but it will help them. They can prompt it, who they are, kind of build their bio in that and create that for them. And so these stories that are coming out through the blogs, creates a compounding effect in addition to that. So once an AI agent finds them the first time and realizes they were helpful, they're more apt to go back and check that site again for the next question in that area. So something to educate your retailers on in where the discoverability is coming from now. The nice thing about this is, of course, there's ways that they can pay to simplify or automate this, but they can also do it on their own. They can create those blogs and FAQs. They can put them on their site. So from a starting point, everyone is capable of getting into this space, and start making themselves relevant out there and discoverable.
And all we're trying to do here is drive traffic to the website. We know when consumers land on the website that a percentage of that will translate into in-store traffic. And so in order to boost in-store traffic, what we're focusing on here is how do we increase web traffic? And this has been a huge boost for us. And I'll tell you some of the most popular ones are like how to get pet urine out of a sofa. And it is, it's a gross article to write and read, but people are really searching for that. And if they're able to find their local store within that search, if they're unable to clean their furniture, then boom, they've got a space to purchase new furniture. And as Taylor mentioned, in order to write, it's easier to write blog posts than it's ever been before, because you can utilize AI to do it. And so one prompt that you might want to give your retailers to utilize, or you could even write some for them related to the lines that you carry and provide them and say, hey, go ahead and post these on your website to help boost this as an add-on for you. But you want to search for, hey, what are consumers local to my area searching for related to furniture? And see what AI comes up with. Ask it to write a blog post that's informative and will rank highly for AI platforms. And you'll get content for days coming out of that they can post onto their site, to help generate that traffic.
Yep.
All right. We got a question in chat, and then I've got a question for you as well. But it says, where do you post your blog to bring traffic to your website? Is that a standalone page? Is it built into the website? How?
Yeah, that side of it is not as important, because the agents are going to find it as long as it's there. So blog page, if you have a designated blog page, naturally that is the primary area that we see them in. But lower beyond the fold of your homepage, if you just, if you're unable to do it as frequently, but you're updating it so often, it's okay if it's on, you know, a varying page within your site. But we do typically see a designated blog page on sites.
You just want to make sure, to Taylor's point, you just want to make sure the URL is the same, right? So www.yourfurniturestore.com/blog. You don't want to make it different than your URL, but a lot of platforms have blogs inherent, or you could do a plugin for them. And if not, you just create a new page and you can stack content on top of one another as your blog page.
All right. So here's my question for you, and I apologize if it's loaded, and I apologize if I'm not asking it correctly. But I guess I'm a simple guy, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand correctly. Are are you suggesting that consumers now are starting their shopping process using AI and saying, "Hey, chat, where can I go to find this type of product locally?" Or, "Hey, this is my budget. This is what I'm looking for. Where can I find it?" Or is it that they're using AI to essentially solve a problem, and are there ways to help a retailer, I guess, boost the searchability or findability or optimize their site for both scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. And right, it is a bit of both. Now, what we're talking about a little bit is we're talking more about the meeting the customer at a little different spot, being like you said, finding them when they're trying to solve a problem. And, let's face it, right now with furniture in general, people, if you have a messed up dinner table, you're probably going to look to fix it before you have to go buy it. And so one of the perks that you can also share with your dealer of this, catching them at the very top is maybe their buying urgency isn't come to store tomorrow, but when they come ready to start shopping again, they've already established themselves as the comp, if you will. So rather than going out, when they start to look for a new table, if they find one that's, $8.99, this and that, they're going to say, well, let me compare that to so and so where I saw this information first. So they are positioned a little better when that journey starts. But to your other point, they are, when they're looking for products, changing the way they try to find that. So good example would be, if they're looking for a sofa, they don't look now for a blue 96-inch sofa and see what products or links show up. They'll search more commonly for, I'm a family of four. We use our sofa most nights for several hours. We have two pets that are allowed on the sofa. One sheds, one doesn't. They're very specific with who they are and what they're looking for. And so to show a product is very difficult for an AI agent to match that. So they're trying to come back with, again, informative and helpful knowledge base that, again, your customer can position themselves. So that way, you know, they're more apt to come in and shop because they know you'll have something that matches their family's lifestyle or their family's desires. So you're getting a little bit of a different product search than you were before.
Yeah, they're asking like what type of quality brand should I be on the lookout for? What type of fabric will be the most resilient? How should I start my search for a mattress? What types of things, what type of questions do I need to answer before shopping for a mattress? We see this a ton. If you guys have lift chair lines. We see this a ton for people that are moving into lift chairs, right? Like, how do I start my search for a lift chair? What are my options related to lift chairs? So we see it a lot for, anyone entering sort of a new space. We see it a lot with smaller spaces, right? Hey, how do I make the most out of my X by X living room and what type of furniture could I put in here that's cross-functional. So they're starting sort of their discovery at a point where they're asking questions instead of just typing something into a search engine, right? That's how things are changing, is that consumers are starting to ask questions about how they should go about a shopping experience versus simply typing in a keyword, right? Um, and I'll put some examples in the chat of Built Right's page just so you can see some of them. They are actually up to a point where they are posting, I mean, I think they're doing like 90 articles a month because this is working so well for them, especially within their area. But it's trying to hit that customer at the point where they have either a challenge or they're starting their discovery.
Yep.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And last thing I'll put on this, we're seeing customers that are utilizing this heavily. Within a 6-month period, they're reaching up to 8 million impressions on these specifically within the blog space. And of course, for a single store, impression rates before that would have been, a high would be in the 100,000. So 8 million impressions is quite the jump up.
And for those of us who are less tech savvy, what does an impression mean? Is that just someone that sees it, or?
Yep. How many times it's been in front of eyes on the search.
Okay, thank you.
Solid wood is another one that consumers ask a lot about. So like features, American made brands, they ask a ton about that. So any blogs that your brands or your retailers can do related to any of those kind of features that are special to your lines or to your retailers, those are faring quite well.
Great. Thank you again.
Mm-hmm. Another one that is in the same vein of that urgency we talked about before, but this probably is going to hit home a little bit more in terms of familiarity of traditional runs of sales and events. But something we've seen big success in recently is what we're calling manufactured tentpole events. So if you think about, a classic tent sale, whether it's anniversary or annual, whatever it is, they rent the big tent, bring it out. But, the notion is that tent is coming down for sure, right? So that's kind of the urgency factor of a tent sale, is the tent will not stay up forever. So what we found is there's a big opportunity without having to wait for a major holiday. So, you get a dry spell between Memorial to July 4th, or, July 4th isn't a great shopping holiday. So you kind of are going from Memorial to Labor Day with this kind of space. So, we found that we don't have to wait for these massive holiday events to drive traffic. And the tent sale concept has always been a huge traffic driver. And with the manufactured tent pole event, we're kind of another way to look at it is an in-store tent sale. So you're not having to really do all the effort and work of getting a tent up in your parking lot, but you are promoting it in the same vein. So, for your dealers, we say make it fun, find up something to celebrate. Maybe it's the owner's dog's birthday, and they're blowing out this great event in celebration of that. But it really ties that around that same sense of urgency that these deals are not going to last and these deals are big. And so, you know, utilizing the high impact graphics, high impact advertising that you would do for clearance, but inside the store to replicate that tent experience, you do want to designate, the sale area. You don't want to necessarily just tag your items. You're not making this a store-wide sale. This is a concentrated product event, making these deals, impactful, make it feel like a big clearance zone or whatever it is. Again, mimicking that tent effect in store. So here, Harkness is a customer of ours out in the Northwest Pacific. We did a large in-store tent sale event, replicated that carnival style, and they had a huge successful weekend around that. And they designated, I'm blanking on the square footage now, but it's just an area of their store, rearranged it for that week or weekend, and customers coming in, sales associates knew exactly where to go to find those bargains and find those great deals.
And to your point earlier, Taylor, when you were talking about trying to keep the floor fresh, this is a great way, if it's been stagnant, to try to move the things out so that you can get some more product on there in a way that doesn't feel like, they're just dogs.
Yep. So yeah, we're all looking for ways to move some product. And like I said, part of this is presenting ideas that can move the product without having to present the product for the fourth time. So the last point we'll go over, this is something that is a little bit newer in the space, but it's all about driving some precision ad campaigns and targeting, excuse me. And we've seen this now. This company is called Vibe.co. This company is available to anyone and everyone. This is not something that you have to have RNA to get. You don't have to have a specific agency to be able to manage this. Dealers can manage this on their own. They can go straight to Vibe.co online and start playing around with it. But the tidbits and information to share on it is, what we're seeing from an agency's point of view is the old way of kind of that shotgun blast, spray everywhere you can. It could bring in some traffic, but it wasn't as qualified. And so what it does, it kind of narrows your aim, if you will. So you're kind of getting a rifle with a scope as a hunting analogy. Hence the reason there's guns behind me. But no, the truth is, I'm just a Southern guy. But no, we're it's putting a scope on your rifle and really narrowing down what you want to aim for and what you're going to get. But the company as a whole is targeted around commercials and streaming. So it grants you access to over 500 streaming platforms. And if you're like me, you're like, I had no clue there were over 8, But of course, it has the access to all the premiums, your HBOs, Netflix, Peacocks, YouTube, etc. But there are a lot out there that people are using, especially from a free stance like Tubi and things like that. A lot of TVs come pre-built with them in there and things like of that nature. But you can actually get very granular with where you want your ad to be placed. One of our favorite case studies is Sloan Brothers down in Florida. One of the things we worked with them on was, in Florida specifically, and probably some of your other areas, and really in today's buyer demographic for older generation, a lot of them are living on portfolios, Social Security. They don't have a high household income. And, if you look at Spectrum or some of the traditional media platforms, household income has always been this big factor of, who's your target audience. With this Vibe, you can actually narrow it down to net worth. You can use household income still, but we see that net worth in this particular area is a much better indicator of a qualified buyer. Um, Within that, we're able to pinpoint what the key TV viewing hours are. So we see that 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. in this particular area and 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. were the top times that people were on TV and watching. So we're able to not just broadcast throughout the day as whatever channel found a slot for us or whatever channel felt was a good time to put our ad in there. We were actually able to dictate we only want to be in these few hours. So don't spend our money on a 2 p.m. show or a 2 a.m. broadcast of whatever. And then we can also look at program types, so whether, watching Wheel of Fortune or, we know this area is big on, the I forget Bloodline, the Florida Key Show, whatever it is, we can kind of pick and tailor around those program types and those customer profiles because streaming platforms do provide a lot of data on their customers. So now you've really zeroed in your budget. This particular ad, we did a comp because we used the same brand even. So we focused on Stress Less for 2 different campaigns. And so before, when we were using the old model through Spectrum, we did a 12,000 ad spend and we did generate about 29,000 in sales. When we moved it to Vibe, we narrowed down the ad spend to only $2,500. That same period, same brand, we generated 85,000 in sales. So a massive increase, way lower budget. And so basically it's smart advertising. And so with this new world of how people are viewing TV, how people are watching, and where your commercials are showing up, we see this as a company that has really come in and really shifted how things work and really transformed that side of advertising. So again, this is something that's accessible to everyone. And we're just seeing a really unique strategy point there with them.
I'm going to jump in with the same question I had for you with the social media advertising. Are there anything or any things or minimum thresholds that a rep should be aware about when he's qualifying whether or not his customer should invest in this type of advertising? What sort of questions should he ask that his retail partner, his or her retail partner? Obviously they've already got to have the content prepared, but are there certain things that work better than others? Certain things that they should have in place, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, there would need to be some production or something of, creating the content. But if they're using any kind of traditional TV today, whether it's local stations or, they could still have, I don't know, all the major cable providers, if there are any left, still out there trying to plug cable around and ads in that space. But it's very similar, radio ads and things. So if they're already spending in those markets, I think there's a space within Vibe to give it a try. Vibe itself, I think the minimum is very low, like $50. So it's not anything that, I would say is a barrier, if you will. But yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the big question is, have you ever done a commercial? Are you using any kind of TV, whether it's streaming or classic broadcast? And then, from a budget perspective for a commercial, truthfully, that can vary wildly. So
it's not as expensive as retailers think it is, though. I mean, we've got retailers that
especially
are
if you just
getting
do some images.
They've got great video that you can put together for $500 for one ad, and you can even run an evergreen something if they really want to play around with it. But the cost to create video is less of a barrier today than I think it has been in the future or in the past. Sorry.
Sure.
And I think the way that we started to roll this out is we're always trying to figure out what's next, right? What other tools are out there that we can play around with, that we can utilize for our clients. as a way to change things up or utilize technology in a different way. And so basically what we did, you can see it in this example, is we took, hey, you've got a budget for cable. We don't want to take that full budget away, but let's take this tiny little percentage of it and play around with Vibe. And so that's what I would recommend to them, similar to the example on the Facebook burst. Don't create a budget out of this and go from zero to nothing. But if you're already doing some video, if you're not yet into streaming, or if you're not satisfied so far with the way that streaming has worked for you, put a little into Vibe and see how it works and see how you can play around with it. And they have done incredible things over the last, even since we've been using it, to up the features and experience that you can really drill into. There's a lot of attribution available. So I think it's something that's worth trying, and it's especially for if you're a rep talking to a retailer, if they're already doing cable advertising, this would be a great thing to play around with.
Okay, yeah. And the follow-up question I had, you kind of alluded to it. Is this more of a drip campaign strategy, or is this a burst, or it just vary by customer?
It probably depends on what your budget is and what you're trying to go after, right? It is when you get into it, you'll see that, a Disney Plus is going to cost you more than a nobody's heard of this streaming thing over here. So I think it depends on what audience you're going after, what your as a retailer, what your base might look like. I mean, for Sloan Brothers, who are in Orlando, Stressless is a higher end brand. They are a higher end store. They're looking for high net worth individuals. They're working with they know their customer and what demographic. And so we were able to get really granular with that. And so what I would do is key in on a granular piece of your customer base and figure out how much money you've got to be able to play around with it.
Okay, all right, very helpful. What's
And that
next,
kind
Taylor?
of, I would say that kind of leads into a little bit of, the takeaways and recap here is, with these, we talked about the summer months specifically, but even the year as a whole, it's a great time to rethink some of the strategies and you're not having to reinvent anything. And so as Leah kind of alluded, there's a lot of new, techniques or avenues out there. So take a little bit, try something new. That's kind of the encouragement or the stress we'd put to the dealers is, why not try something new if things are a little slow? You're not going to feel like you're losing out on something in that manner. So, the big things that we covered, of course, were the equipping the sales associates, giving that empowerment at the showroom level, whether that's through you or through the dealer direct, concentrated urgency, tailored discovery. If we know the AI world's vast, so if you ever feel like you're lost in that, let's talk some more. We're always open to chat with you guys and help educate. I know Steve mentioned there's some seminars coming up about AI specifically. So take advantage of those if they're available to you and continue to learn, because it only helps you both personally and as an advocate and a strategist for your dealers. Um, Creating those manufacturer milestones, ways to celebrate, ways to pull in unique deals and unique promotions within that local market. And then, of course, the last thing we covered in that precision TV targeting, just getting a little more focused or hyper focused on where you're spending those extra dollars or where you're moving them around to. But, we'd love to open the floor, of course. Any questions, all questions, whether it's about this or other things. And then as we're on this page, of course, my contact information is here on the right if you ever want to reach out. Um, I will not be in Vegas market, but I am typically at all the markets. So live here in High Point, local to the downtown, but call, text, email, hop on a Zoom anytime. We can talk or chat, anything related.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm just checking the chat here. Um, we've got one. If you're a multi-line furniture rep, um, any of these best practices, how's it helping you increase your active account base? And then there's a question about where does your QR code take the customer? I could probably check that
This
out.
QR code, sorry, this is to schedule a Zoom with me, so it's just my calendar.
Okay. All right, that one's just a calendar.
Apologies. Yeah, if your customer wants to talk more, we can do it all together.
And how we created the QR. So there are QR code generators out there. We also have a designer who has Adobe, and that's what they use this to create that. You can also do it if you have an iPhone. It will also create one for you to share your contact information. If you were a multi-line furniture rep, how would you increase your active account base? I think based on what I don't know. If there was an easy answer for that, we'd be in that world, wouldn't we? But what I would say and what we've kind of talked about thus far is doing something different, figuring out a way to stand out. Perhaps it's providing these additional tools to showcase that you're gonna be more of a value than just the lines that you bring. Um, yeah, I would just play around with what you think might be holding you back, and I would try something different. And I think we believe that action is the answer. So just like keep moving, right? Keep moving, keep trying things, keep playing around. In fact, Taylor has a new AI agent that he built. Is his name Lloyd Taylor?
Yes, from the show Entourage.
Yep. And Lloyd helps Taylor identify within certain geographic areas customers that might be great fits for us. So you can, use a prompt that's like, hey, this is the type of customer that I'm looking for. Here are some of the lines that they likely carry. And can you find me furniture stores within kind of this geographic territory and see, and then you kind of correct it from there to train it how to help you out. So, and I think, a sucker's born every day, and may we convince some more of them to open furniture stores.
Yeah. Yep. And just to add to, I think all reps we've built in a muscle memory to be able to shop a floor pretty well. You walk in, you find missing price points, you find missing styles. You're asking questions about, what is moving. And so this we're hoping is kind of an added arsenal of you are your retailers kind of ears and eyes out there in the field for them. It's hard for them to send out spies everywhere, especially they can't really breach outside their local. So when you come in, they're kind of hoping for some insights of what's happening out there. What are you seeing? And so this is a way that not only bring that product floor knowledge or what you've seen missing, but some things that you're seeing out there in a marketing world that they're going to understand and be able to take as well. So, yeah.
Okay, well, great. Well, I haven't seen any new questions come in the chat, so I think that's a good place to call it a day. So for everyone who came out, thank you for making time. Obviously, Leah, Taylor, couldn't do this without you. Great information that you shared with us today. We're so incredibly grateful for your willingness to share your expertise with us. So again, I'm recording this. I'll send out a link to the recording as well as this presentation within the next couple of hours to everyone that registered, and we'll kick it out in our weekly newsletter as well. So again, thanks everyone for joining us today, and stay tuned for those future webinars. We'll have them posted on our website within the next week or two, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.